some people care about the content and whether they're believable and trustworthy, but it's like they're sitting there judging, the package and not necessarily the insides, the content. Yeah. And I learned a lot about, the news business from that. That it's really, the stuff that I was sitting there caring about all day, which I continued to care about because I really cared about journalism, is not necessarily what viewers are looking for. They really want to make sure that, this is a friend, this is someone I like. It's sort of like voting for somebody, it's like voting for a politician. So it's really, it is marketing, you're marketing a product, and the product is news. The product is really the people that present the news.
We're back. We're live. This is on. It is Over a Pint. Once again, joining me today is my buddy, Mr. Kurt Lingle, VP over at Celtic Advertising, full-service agency located in Milwaukee's historic Third Ward. You got me, Pat McGovern, Director of New Business Development over at Acedia in Milwaukee's Fifth Ward. We're real close to one another, practically neighbors. We got a great guest on today, another great guest. Kurt, we're blessed with how many cool guests we've had on the podcast. I'm really looking forward to start talking to Glenn. Mm-hmm. Kurt, before we get into the interview with Glenn, it was kind of funny today. I put the hose outside, and my house goes up against an alley, right? So usually about 7:30, it is a parade of kids going by, like everybody's heading to school. The moms, it's just like the dogs, the strollers, everything's going by, right? And so it's about 7:30, so I'm just waiting for the parade to go kind of finish off, right? I'm waiting, kind of taking a look. Oh, there is no parade today because school is out, man. It's over. So it's like officially summer here, but it doesn't feel like it, does it?
Yeah.
I mean, the last few days have been pretty chilly.
Yeah, so it's school's out for the summer.
School is out, and we're officially into summer. Anyway, enough said with the summer talk. Today we have a Glenn Kleiman on the podcast. Glenn I thought about this a while. I don't know how to best describe Glenn as just a guy who's been at the key of things for a long time. He's going to give us his history. He's going to give us some background, his thoughts about marketing. Glenn, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you inviting me.
This is going to be awesome. I'm really looking forward to getting your perspective, Glenn. I mean, you've seen some things, so this is going to be really cool. But it's called Over a Pint for a reason, Glenn. We like to enjoy our beer here, or other things. We've had guests on that have enjoyed a number of other things. So, Glenn, what are you having today? What are you enjoying?
Well, considering when I was in the marketing world, Miller was when it was still Miller Brewing Company.
Yeah,
was my client for all 23 years. I'm definitely a loyal Miller drinker. So Miller Lite.
Awesome.
Keeping it real, keeping it basic. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Mr. Lingle.
Yeah, I'm never one to turn down a beer. We are in the brew city, and we got so many tasty brews that we bring on the show. But this morning, I'm going local, but I'm drinking straight Java. I've got Collectivo in my hand. It's a local brand. Heck, we'll promote them too. But cheers.
Cheers, guys. I'm enjoying the Modelo today. We've been talking about Modelo for a couple episodes now, so I've got one of those. But yeah, I'm two-fisting it as well. I got a large Collectivo in my hand as well. I just want to put a
plug in for Stone Creek because I'm very good friends with the guy that owns it, and I think their coffee is fantastic.
We love Stone Creek. I
love their location on I do too. Now, are they not to go off subject here, but let's go off topic here. There's a new location is it going into downtown Whitefish Bay?
Yeah.
It's actually right across the street from their original store.
Yes.
Which they had closed. So they're replacing City Market on
yes. Happy to hear that. And I do love the location on Downer. That seems to be a go-to spot. I love to kind of just, I don't know, have coffee there, hang out, have whatever. But anyway, yes, we love them too. So why not? Let's plug everyone this morning. Anyone local.
Glenn, thanks for being on the pod. Why don't you start us off? You've got a background that it's amazing. So set the table for us, Glenn. Give us a little bit of understanding about your background, where you came from. We're going to get into your Full House experience, which is, for those listening, it was a sizable agency here in the Milwaukee area. But Glenn, give us your background. Start us off.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I guess the umbrella kind of over my career was about communications, to put it generally. I started in journalism. I went to Northwestern Journalism School, and it's all I ever wanted to be since I was in 7th grade was a journalist. The junior high paper, the high school paper, the college paper. So I became a television news reporter, and I was on the air for a few years, about eight or 9 years, and then wanted to get into management and to I always felt like I wanted to be in those meetings behind the closed doors and see what was going on. So I came to Milwaukee to do that at Channel 4. Got off the air. The last on-air job was in Miami, which was my hometown, actually. Came to Milwaukee, figured I'd be here for a few years in the TV news business. You kind of bounce around markets. But
yeah,
we had a 1-year-old at the time, a daughter, and we just fell in love with the place as a place to raise a family. And we've been here forever since then. So I was the managing editor at Channel 4, which is like the number 2 guy in the newsroom. And did that for 3 years. And then said, I transitioned out of that into a video production company. I started my own company. I knew how to do video, of course, from being in TV. In the time, and this seems like the dark ages, but at the time, everything was in print. This was pre-internet. Yeah. This was This was 1989. And so having a video about your company was very cool. It was considered to be kind of progressive. So we were doing corporate videos. And as I mentioned earlier, Miller Brewing was one of our first clients. And I remember literally jumping up and down in my office by myself because it was just me when I got the first Miller gig. And I'm proud that we kept them for all 23 years that I had the company. But anyway, so it was video production. And then we started noticing that, about in the mid 90s that people started communicating through the computers. Everybody had a computer on their desk and the budget started going to computers. So we transitioned or morphed into what is now known as a digital marketing agency. At the time, there wasn't even that term. It was just like, right. Well, we do interactive. We were doing CD-ROMs. We were doing whatever it was that was hot at the time. And we started building websites from scratch, with people who were learning as we did it. We were early into the digital space, and I give the people that I hired credit for that because I'm really not a technical guy. But we hired some people who knew what they were doing, and we grew from there. So we really kept video as a competency, but really branched much more into I would say computer-based communications, and did that for 23 years. Sold that to Laughlin Constable, and obviously a significant agency in town. They were searching for more digital chops. They were actually taking some of our people, luring them over to their place. And I said, hey, you obviously like our people. Why don't you? I was ready to get out. And it worked out, so they ended up absorbing anybody who wanted to come over there, which was almost everybody, and our clients. So I taught a little bit at Marquette, again in the communication school, started doing a little bit of consulting for nonprofits around digital content, because I was coming from journalism. I was more of a content than tech guy. And then one of my clients was the 88.9 Radio Milwaukee, the local public music station in town. And I was helping them on their digital content. And then sadly, the executive director became very ill, ultimately passed away from cancer. And they asked me if I wanted to be the executive director. And that's what I did for 4 years. After consulting there for a year and a half, I was the executive director for 4 years until I stepped down and decided to quote unquote retire, which sounds to me as it's still a word that's bizarre. And I'm still doing stuff. I'm still helping companies and nonprofits, but just kind of on a project basis on the side. There you go. That's my career. It's, all communications, but different, from TV to digital to radio, but all within the umbrella of communication.
A lot of bases.
Yeah.
A lot of bases.
Glenn, I want to take just a minute, just because I love the history of your story. And I just want to take a minute or two. Can you just take us behind the scenes when you were at TMJ4? Big newsroom there. What was that like? What were your responsibilities? Just give us kind of a day in the life of Glenn when you were there, just because, again,
Sure.
I'm just curious, just from a purely selfish standpoint.
Sure. So it starts really the day before, where you sit down and, what do we know that's going to happen the next day? It's in what they call the book. It's like people that have sent news releases, things are scheduled. And you start, trying to plan the next day. And then the next morning you have a story meeting where it's like, what are we, basically you've got time to fill, that afternoon, that evening, that and later that night. How are we going to fill this time in a way that's valuable to the viewer? So, I kind of turn myself the foreman of the video factory. Every day we had to create video that was meaningful and important, hopefully, to the audience, and hopefully it helps inform them. So you try to figure out, in the morning, who's going to do what reporter and what photographer, we called cameramen or videographers at the time, photographers, what are they going to go out and do? So you hopefully have enough in the morning, but sometimes you don't. You got to really brainstorm, like, well, what else can we do? What are people talking about? What's hot? And then, they go out and do the stories. And then obviously during the day, things change. Yeah. Even if, you're on the way to a story and then something else happens and you're on your two-way radio and say, hey, go here instead. Right. So things are, you have to be flexible and constantly flexible. And ultimately, I would be helping to make those decisions as far as who's going to cover what. As the managing editor, when they come back with the story, I'd review the scripts and make copy changes if necessary. Give them, ideas of how to put, how to structure the story and maybe in a better way. Talk to the producers. We have a story meeting in the afternoon. What's going to be the lead? What's going to be second? How are we going to stack the shows? And then you watch. What was amazing is that unlike many other business, then you watch your product up on the screen. You've got the other TV monitors up, and you compare yourself on a day-to-day, minute-to-minute basis versus your competition. I don't know many other, businesses where you see that and you feel like, well, we beat them on this story, or they beat us on that story, and why didn't we have that story? Or congratulations, we scooped them on this story, that kind of thing. So you start measuring yourself against the other stations and how you did, and then you start to figure out how we're going to freshen this up for the 10 o'clock. What are we going to keep from the 6 and the 5 and what's new for 10, and how are we going to, keep that as a more, fresher story, so it's not just a repeat of the earlier news. That's kind of the day in the life.
The pace there seems to me both somewhat intoxicating and just a case study for burnout.
Stressful.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It
is. There's no question about it. As a reporter, you're out there trying to, get this done. And, you got to finish your piece before it airs, obviously. Right. And, sometimes you don't have a lot of time to do that. Something may break at 4:30 in the afternoon, and it's got to be on at 5 or 6 or, and you're in the edit room, and you're just, at some point, we used to talk about like just cover black, because it's like, just find a shot that will work, that'll kind of work at least over this black piece of the story, so it's not on the air black, so you've got something to show, because you can't get picky, you know what I mean? When it's and I, as a reporter, I used to drive producers crazy, because I would take it to the very last second, and the producers in the control room going, are we going to have Glenn's story? Are we going to have Glenn's story? Because it wasn't ready yet. So, I would be running down the hall with the story, this is when tape existed, and and slamming it in the tape machine and pressing play as the anchor is leading into my story.
Right.
Hey,
So that's insane.
hey, Glenn, not to put you on the spot, but I want to ask this question before we kind of advance to the next area of our conversation with you. But when I think about, the journalism, the news industry, whatever, however you want to coin it, and I think about the position you held, it's like, I forgot, I'm going to put a quote out there and I'm going to probably misquote it, but I know it was I think it was Mike Tyson, but it's like, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, something along those lines. And it is one of my favorite quotes. I want to ask you, if you could, it's like, in your time, can you, it's great to plan, but you're right, in the news industry, I mean, your whole world could implode based on something that just rocked your world the last minute. Do you have like one example in your time where you look back, it's like, yeah, there was, that's the time there was, this went down. Do you have like just a story where it's like, Jesus, everything was perfect until this? I was just kind of curious. And if you don't, that's okay too.
I'm trying to think of something, and I'm sorry, I really can't. Nothing jumps out. I do want to talk about one thing, though. It made me think of something else about marketing, and TV news marketing. And, I just described the day and how we were focused on, getting the best stories and making sure they were written and produced properly as best we can under the time pressure. And, my job was to make sure it was fair and accurate. And then we would do, then we would do focus groups. Maybe you can edit this, but we would spend the day trying to make sure that our news was balanced and fair and accurate. And I would review the scripts, and then we would do focus groups with viewers. And what they would be commenting on is the anchor's clothing. I like her. I don't like the way her hair looks. So you're really, marketing people, likable people. Yes, some people care about the content and whether they're believable and trustworthy, but it's like they're sitting there judging, the package and not necessarily the insides, the content. Yeah. And I learned a lot about, the news business from that, that it's really, the stuff that I was sitting there caring about all day, which I continued to care about because I really cared about journalism, is not necessarily what viewers are looking for. They really want to make sure that, this is a friend, this is someone I like. It's sort of like voting for somebody, it's like voting for a politician. So it's really, it is marketing, you're marketing a product, and the product is news. The product is really the people that present the news. Yes, you want it to be responsible, obviously, but I found that really eye-opening for me, and sort of disappointing as someone who cared about journalism.
Sure.
The how, not just the what.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's like any product. It's how do you package it? What is the, in the case of the news, it's the anchors are the package. The graphic package matters, the opening music, the set design, all those things package the news. And it is a marketing effort as much as anything.
Interesting. So, Glenn, you're at TMJ you're doing a lot of video. You've got this experience, and you decide, hey, I'm gonna start my own gig, and I'm gonna go off and do this. Give us, how did you make that leap, and why did you make that leap? And the reason I'm asking is, you started off by saying, hey, this is all I wanted to do was be a journalist, and now I'm doing video for Miller. A little bit different there. So what happened?
I think I got a little bit disillusioned with the news business. I also felt that I didn't want to keep moving. I mean, it was a lifestyle decision. I didn't think there was a lot of upward mobility for me in the Milwaukee market. We wanted to stay because of the family. Also, a friend of mine who had been in the news business had started a business video company in Denver. And he had said, hey, why don't you come along with me and open up a Midwest office in Milwaukee? And I went out and met with him, and it was intriguing. We never did it together, but it sort of planted the seed. My father and my father-in-law were both had their own businesses, so I'd seen that as role models, which I think made it a little easier. They gave me the confidence that they thought I could do it. So those things combined, also financially, I felt like I could do better potentially. So those were all factors, that helped me make that leap. It was still a leap. I didn't know anything. In TV news, you didn't think about money. Your salary, but you didn't make the money come in. In fact, there was a hard rule that the salespeople were not allowed in the newsroom because the fear was that they would say, hey, do a story on this company that's advertising with us. And we wanted to keep that line really. So it's like the check just showed up. You didn't have to create the check. You just did your job as a journalist. Well, making that transition into being your own boss and being your own business was completely, I used to think like the dollar sign was over my head all the time when it was before, it was never over my head. Right. So that was a big, big, big change to, sitting there worrying about creating revenue. So that was huge. But I just knocked on doors, and Milwaukee was open enough to listen. I did use my news background as a selling point. I said, hey, I could do news style, videos for you. I mean, I'm not a director. I don't know film. I never, there are a lot of people in the video production business that really approach it more as a directorial thing. And I was never like that. I was like, let's just get it done kind of thing. Cause it's like, let's hammer it out, and in some ways that really worked because people like the realistic view, and bought into the fact that I knew how to do it. So, yeah.
Cool. So
go ahead.
So these videos, Glenn, were they focused on, what were they focused on? Like, what was it, and where were they used at? Were they
like the first, example, which is how the news background helped. Miller was doing a kind of an internal newscast, and they needed someone to go out in the field and produce segments for the news program. So I was a perfect fit for that, and the guy that was doing the production was a Miller employee. He came from the news business. So he saw what I could bring. So my first assignment was going out into in Massachusetts to Cape Cod, I think it was, to do that Miller was doing a promotion, and we had to document the promotion and show the other distributors around the country how this promotion worked and that you could do it in your market. And, it was sort of like a case study. Yeah. And so we did a lot of case studies around the country about this is working. You should, idea sharing. So you could do it in LA because it's working in Miami, that kind of thing.
Got it.
And we would do like 2.5 minute segments, like a news piece. So that's, how I got my start.
So you've got the video, you leave TMJ4, you start the video, because of your connections, because of your background, you start getting clients. Mm-hmm. And then, Glenn, does that video production company, does that morph into Full House? Is that how it works? Yeah. So the beginning, it was called Channel One, which at the time, again, playing on the TVs, there was no Channel One on your TV at the time. Right. So we called it Channel One, and it ended up there was a Channel One in Massachusetts, and we had this, little battle. So we said, we're just going to leave that name behind, because when the internet came around, everybody started saying everybody's names, because channel1.com is taken, Anyway, so we morphed into the name of Full House, because at the time we were doing video and websites, and we said, well, we have a full house of capability. Not knowing that, honestly, I didn't even know there was a TV show called Full House. So for some reason that flew by me, but one of our employees goes, talked about, is Buffy going to be there, or one of the characters of the show? Yeah. I forgot. Anyway, so yeah, we at the time were really, you talk about full service agencies. We were never really like a traditional agency. We didn't do print. We didn't even do that much strategy. We were basically executing and producing websites, producing videos. A lot of agencies that didn't have the capability were subbing out to us, because at the time, traditional agencies were still, just beginning to understand that this was necessary, and it wasn't
the demand wasn't quite there yet, but it was getting there. So they didn't know how to do it. So we were doing a lot for other agencies. They were providing the strategy, they were providing the branding, and then we were doing like, well, we need a website, or we need a video, or we need, whatever it may be, a training, exercise, and whatever we could do, we would do for them. We'd also do it directly for companies that were, had communications departments or marketing departments, that kind of shit. So
you hit this, you hit this wave at exactly the right moment. I mean, you just saw this coming and you got on it and rode it, which is amazing. Glenn, was there a moment though, when you think back on it, was there a moment in your head where it's like, oh yeah, this is going to be a thing? Because a lot of people were in your situation. A lot of people saw things like this coming. I mean, I'm old enough to remember these conversations as well. And there were a lot of people who are like, eh.
And actually, the guy that I mentioned that had the Denver company did not make the transition. And ultimately, I think that, he was hurt by that. But I guess I would give myself the credit for being smart enough to hire people that knew how to do it. One of the key hires is Eric Zaramsky, who was extremely important in helping us, really was the driving force in helping us really create the whole digital capability, because he was more technically oriented, and I knew that I needed that. And he provided that and did an amazing job for many, many years. He's still doing that now on his own. He's got his own agency that's doing that. But yeah, I guess I saw it coming. I saw the budgets moving over there. I saw the fact that it wasn't no longer a VCR that was the communications delivery vehicle. It was the computer was the delivery vehicle, and how are we going to deliver really the same purpose, the same content through a different delivery mechanism? We were still doing the same kind of work, but we were just delivering it differently.
A couple of things come to mind, if I could. It's like I'm listening to your story, Glenn, and it's interesting because if you look at, if someone listens to your story for the first time cold, and they don't have the benefit of having you kind of guide someone through a little bit, you really, it seems to make sense. You, as you explained, even though there was the stepping stone might have been into a different frontier, you figured out a way to parlay the talents and experiences that you had that would be necessary now to take you into this new venture. So that was the first thing, like just how you described like what you learned about marketing by being in the news industry. I'm like, yeah, he figured that out. And the other thing is, you've talked a lot about team, hey, when I started this, I didn't know anything. You surrounded yourself with smart people. But the other thing too, as I think about you, it's like in our world, mediums have a way of reinventing themselves too. And it's kind of like, I love how you just said it. You're spot on. It's like we have the content. We just got to figure out what the channel is, and the channel is every bit as important as the message, and the message is every bit. So I'm seeing this. I don't know how to phrase this, Pat and Glenn, but like there's just a lot of, maybe it's like you said, Pat, it's like this timing, something's going on. I don't want to call it luck because there's talent, but boy, a lot of things are working to your advantage. And it's just interesting to hear you tell your story, because I've seen a lot of stepping stones, and things do make sense to me.
Thanks. I mean, the challenge was that we didn't really know how to do this stuff. I mean, even the people that were more technically savvy than me, which was everybody, we were learning as we were going, and this was like in the mid 90s when the internet was really just becoming a known thing. Right. So, we were spending a lot of time, and talking about it from a business perspective, on R&D, on the fly. So we were learning how to do a website. We were learning how to do, like, again, any other interactive medium, which at the time, like, again, a CD-ROM, which is obviously defunct. But, and then once we started learning how to do it, it was old, because it was changing so fast. Mm-hmm. So, how to make money by investing so much time in learning and trying to figure out how to do it when you're budgeting based on how much time you think you're going to spend on something. and the challenge of that. And that, that continued. We were really riding the wave. We were building functionality from scratch, and then as, CMSs came along, well, are we going to build our own CMS, or, what are we going to do? And all these things around, QR codes, or, social media came along, are we going to invest in that? All these different things came along, and, when we were riding that wave, and there was a lot of decisions like yes or no, or how far do we go, or can we do this or not, because it's all new. It's not like it just was all experimental,
So
it was crazy.
This is so interesting, Glenn. And I want to break up your time at Full House into 3 basic buckets, and just give us your sense on each one of these time frames. So you've got this kind of ramp up period of time where it's like you're just investing in things, and it's starting to take off. You need a certain set of skills, and you need to bring in a certain kind of talent for that. Then you've got your, let's just say, hey, the conversation is shifting now. It's no longer, do I need a website, or is this going to catch on? It's kind of like, yeah, this is going to be a thing. So it's more, you've got a more mature product. So now you're managing the kind of growth. And then you have your last period of time, which is, hey, I'm getting out of this. I'm done. I've run the course on this type of thing. When you think about each one of those, like, can you break this down as, like, in the beginning part? It seems to me like some of the major challenges you're facing are, how do you even find talent, right? I mean, like, how are you going around and trying to just get people? Kurt, I think we lost Glenn.
I think we did too. Yeah. It's well, I was just going to say, and maybe he'll chime in quick, but it's an interesting point. I was going to make the comment to Glenn. It's like, as he's saying, you're learning on the fly, R&D as you go. It's like, I'm wondering too, and I'll have to get his take. Do things become more forgivable too? It's like, it's one thing when you're living in an industry and everyone is in it already. It's like, you better have your shit together. But when you are literally in the wild, wild west,
way through the jungle, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like people don't know what they don't know. So as they're learning, it also means that some of the recipients or the audiences, they don't know either. So it's kind of like, do you know what I'm saying?
I totally do. Do. But I'm just looking at it from, hopefully we'll get Glenn back, when you look at it in terms of just how you have to think about the business, right? Like, if you're running the business, when you're thinking about just growing it, that's a little bit different than, okay, we've got a foothold here now. How do I manage business at that point?
Correct. Let's see if we can get him back in here.
I'm here.
All right.
Was that me?
Glenn, we lost you for a second. You're back.
Yep.
Cool. Let me.
You were saying.
Yeah.
Get down to the 3 parts.
Glenn. Here's what's interesting to me is I want to get your take on three areas of the business. Your kind of ramp up where, you're just building the business. So it's like, where are we getting clients from? How are we staffing? And where do you even find staff at that point, right? Because, like you said, this is a new territory. Then you get to a point where, okay, we're established here. How are you looking at the business, and what are your challenges at that point? And then kind of getting out of it, right? It requires different sets of skills. And just if you could walk us through your kind of process on each one of those categories or each area of your life, that'd be really interesting.
Okay. Well, the building part, was interesting to, know when to hire. I mean, I think that's a challenge even when you're deep into it. How much do you want to do yourself, or even if you've started adding some people, is it, do we have enough people, or do we have too many people? And that remains a challenge throughout, especially because we were more of a project shop. We weren't really an AOR type of shop, so we were, we're trying to balance, to not staff for the peak, but not staff for the valley. And that was always hard, You don't want to stretch your people too hard where they get burned out. But you also don't want people sitting around and then worrying about whether they're going to keep their job. So, that was crazy. But, at the beginning, it took on way too much for myself. I was working, an incredible amount. I remember driving home when the sun was coming up, in remember a job that we did for Miller where they wanted something the next day, and I delivered it the next day in the same clothing I was wearing when I got the assignment the day before.
Yeah.
So that's just something you do when you're trying to get things going. So that's stage one. When you're just trying to ramp up and do whatever, just say yes to everything and deliver or over deliver because you want to keep those people and you want those clients to talk nicely about you to other people. And so that was really just working your butt off until you can get people to help you do your work. So that was phase one. And then, that was really more the video phase where I was, doing a lot of the videos and traveling a lot and so forth. But then when we started, that was about 5 or 6 years. And then in the mid 90s, we started morphing into the digital space. And then you're right, it was hard to find people. That was really also during the .com boom where, people that we hired then were being hired away to California and Denver because, we had some talent and they were in demand. And they were being offered stock options, and ultimately a lot of the stock options were worthless because there was the .com bust. But that's kind of the space we were in. So finding people that knew what they were doing was very, very hard. But we ultimately did, and ultimately the market kind of matured. The talent market matured, and we got people, and we started building a reputation, and we were we grew and our client base grew. We were doing work for, Miller Brewing Company, Harley Davidson, Johnson Controls, Manpower, GE Healthcare, Kimberly-Clark, a lot of the major names in the southeastern Wisconsin, throughout, and even like our video business, as for a while, video shrunk because the pipe wasn't big enough. It was too big of a file. But as YouTube, proved the case, that video can be delivered, our video business kind of grew back again. And we ended up we had a guy that used to work for ESPN named Paul Kaplan, who used his sports, connections. We were doing TV programming for the NFL Players Union out of Washington, D.C.
Wow.
Which aired on Fox, so we did video, we kept doing video, and that grew back, which was nice. So that, all kind of blossomed in the mid to late 2000s, even at the 2008, at the beginning of the meltdown, was our biggest year. We had 92 employees at the time. So we grew into a pretty, significant agency in Milwaukee standards, Sure. And then, then we started feeling the impact of the downturn. And we also, the good news is when you're, as you all know, when your client that likes you moves to another company, they'll take you with them. The bad news is when a client replaces your person with someone that has a previous relationship, you get replaced.
Yep.
And that was the case with a major client of ours, not Miller, but a major client of ours. And we started feeling that really hard. And we started for the first time, trying to lay people off, which we had never done that was 21 years in. At that point, to be honest, if you're talking about phase 3 now, we became more of a tech company. We were doing a lot, our video was a small part, it was probably like 5% of our business, 10%, which is what I felt close to. And the rest of it was, a lot of coders, a lot of programmers, a lot of project management and stuff like that, which was great for us in terms of financially and all that. But for me personally, I felt distant. I felt detached, disconnected from what we became, and that was not healthy for me. It wasn't healthy for the company because I let some other folks kind of take over. I gave up a little bit too much control, I think, and it wasn't good for really anybody. And the lesson there is if you lose the passion, I think it's time to go. And I think I waited a little too long to go. So, you start doing it more for just like lifestyle, money, and I don't think that makes sense. It doesn't work. So that's what I learned that, and I got out and I did fine. I'm not, we're not. It could have been better, but it was fine. But I just should have, just for a lot of reasons, I think it should have been earlier. When you start losing the connection and the passion, you're just doing it to make a check, and I just think that doesn't work.
That's interesting.
So yeah. Thanks, Glenn. Thanks, Glenn, for that. That is just it.
Well, Pat, what I was just going to say is a couple things. One is, first of all, Glenn, when you got cut off for a second, I was telling Pat as we were filling in, as you know, something from the news, we were filling the dead space, and I think we did a pretty good job of it. But I said, my comment to Pat was, I said, you had made mention about R&D on the go or learning as you go and things like that, and I just said, I said, wow, I said it almost sounded like the wild, wild west. And it's like, it's one thing when you're in an industry and everyone else is there already, you better have your shit together. But when you are kind of learning as you go and figuring it out, the reality is not only do you not know what you don't know, but your audience doesn't know what you don't know. So it's kind of like things become more forgivable because people just don't catch it. That's my first thing. So that was my way. But I was just going to say, it's like I appreciate you're a very interesting guest and a very interesting conversation, because I'm looking at some of the questions and I'm hearing some of your background, and a lot of it really fits into our lane of marketing, but it's just hearing you and be very honest about just, passion. That's a life lesson really. And it's kind of like, like when you lose the passion, it's time. So there's a lot going on you're sharing with us that I think is interesting, not just from a marketing perspective, but it's kind of infringing on some of the boundaries that I think there's some really cool takeaways. So I appreciate your story.
Perspective sometimes.
Yeah.
Glenn, I just want to hang on the Full House story for just a couple more minutes, and then we'll segue into your work with 88.9, because that's really interesting as well. One of the things I'm curious about, Glenn, is with Full House, how did you get new business? Or was it just a time where people were beating a path to your door?
I think it was both. I think, we used to talk about new business and then new business. And our definition of new business was really trying to spread out within existing clients. When, like, again, I'll use Miller as an example. We ended up having, I don't know, more than a dozen clients within that organization because of the reputation that we had, which we were very, very proud of, and we earned. But they were also wonderful to work with, and it was a lot of fun, and we did a lot of great work. So the goal was to, take a relationship, obviously, within an organization and expand within that organization. And I think everybody tries to do that. And we did that really successfully. The new is, the not unrelated, it's just like, how do you find, and that was really, really hard. And I think that's hard for everybody. You have the RFP route, which is such a pain in the butt.
Yep.
And, you do it because, well, it's there and it's something that's incoming, and, you win maybe if occasionally. We also learn that, you really need to have some kind of portfolio in that space.
Yep.
We were, and I think this is important, at the beginning, we were like a general store of digital and video, and at the time that was enough because we were early enough in that was okay. But once everybody started getting in, that was no longer good enough, because now, you needed to have not just the technical expertise, but the category, knowledge. So the combination became more important. Are you a beverage, digital agency? Are you I remember we got to the very finals of a RFP for an aviation client. I forgot exactly what it was. And they ended up picking some agency that did aviation, and we didn't do that. So that, you obviously learn from that. And I think the lesson there is, if it's new, you can sell it to anybody, but once it matures, you really need to specialize. And, I think that was something we tried to do as we matured. We kind of broke our company into two different divisions. One was more experiential, which was live interaction, in a bar, at a festival, at a trade show where the consumer, the target was interacting with your stuff live, like on a tablet computer or something like that. And we did that really, really well. We were super innovative. And then the other was more like internal communications, or either B2B or within an organization, like from a manufacturer to a distributor, from a distributor to a retailer, that kind of thing. So we broke it up into that, which was sort of, which was like, it wasn't exactly, business categories. It was sort of how it was being used. Do you follow me?
Yeah.
But we never really, we wanted to do more like, okay, beverage, food and beverage. And we never quite got there. The hard part is to change the tire while the car is speeding ahead, that cliche. Yep. So how do you do that? We never really got to that exactly.
Hey, Glenn, quick question. I just want to ask a real quick question about new business and sales. So we talk a lot about this on the program. And I like how you really did a nice job about breaking out how you define business development. And I agree, RFPs, they suck. Right. I do not like RFPs. You can't control things. But from a business development perspective, when you were at Full House, whose responsibility was it? And I'd like to know, is it the responsibility? Is it sales? I am the new business person. Is it the responsibility of the folks that kind of hold the keys and actually have relationships? Is it both? I'd like to know how you approached it and what your philosophy is.
Well, we had our account folks, and they were responsible for expanding within the organizations. Again, that is more fruitful than trying to go after new business.
Amen.
We have found. Because you've got the relationships. It's obvious, but it's not always taken advantage of as much. And those folks aren't as comfortable selling sometimes. They're more comfortable. They call it farming or hunting. They're more farming. So we need hunters. So we had those folks farming. Hopefully, the folks that had the relationships within the organizations farming for other contacts that that our existing clients could connect us to. We did have some people that were focused just on new business. That was their job, was the new business people, and they were out. We were sending door openers ahead. Some kind of funky little gadget or some mailer that would be unusual, not just a letter or whatever. Yeah. We sent a little fire engine with our logo on it because we thought we could put out fires, that kind of thing. A toy that we ran, that kind of stuff. So at least it gets their attention. It's like, hey, we sent you this thing, and but those things, again, it's the hit rate is very low. It's very low. I did not do a good job personally of going out. I was not a schmoozer. It just wasn't in my personality. I was a guy that came home. I wanted to be home for dinner with my kids and my wife. And so that fell on me. And I guess I failed at that, if that was something that, I was being measured by. So I feel like that is something that the principal probably should be doing, at least getting out and knowing people in the community. I did that in later, the next phase of my career, but there just wasn't something I did. Should they do it? I think so. I had other, Eric, who I mentioned earlier, became a partner, a minority partner. He was better at that than I was. So he kind of picked that up. And then the other folks who ran the divisions, the business communications division and the experiential division, they helped do that as well. So I think it's a combination, to be honest. I think to get the sole job of being the new business development person it's just so hard to find someone who's really, really good at that.
Yeah.
You go through a lot of people before you find someone who's really good at that. And it's a tough job to win, cold calling and that kind of stuff, and, we did trade shows, we did all that stuff, and we weren't really good at it. We were really good at getting in through existing clients, Does that make sense?
It does. Perfect sense. Thank you.
Can you relate to that?
Absolutely, I can relate to it. I think I'm in agreement with you. I thank you for your position. I think you need both farming and hunting, and I think you're absolutely right. There's a role for sales that you have to go at it, and I think there's the folks that are actually working clients. There's trust built there. So part of that responsibility is when you have trust and you're inside, it's like, you're not just taking someone's breakfast order. It's kind of like, you're adding value all the time, and proper suggestion, suggestive selling, but the right kind. Your clients, and you should be making suggestions based on what's in their best interest, and that's how you grow. So no, I think it makes perfect sense. Thank you for answering that.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty typical, but go ahead. Yeah.
We could spend the rest of the time, Glenn, on Full House just because it's so interesting, and you are so
it is
reflective on this in such a good way. But there's another side of your career too, and I want to get to that, and that is with you sell Full House to another agency here in town, and you begin work with 88.9. Glenn, talk to us about that transition. But before you do, explain to the audience who's listening what 88.9 is, right? So just kind of frame that up.
Sure. It's a public radio station. It's one of those that's doesn't sell commercials. So it's really funded by members. Who donate. It's like NPR. People are more familiar with that, but it's music. It's a music station, but it really, so it's funded by donors as well as we call underwriters. It's like advertisers, but there's certain rules and regulations. You can't say certain things about like you can't ask someone to do something. You can't say come to this event. You can't do an ask. So you just say that the event is happening. It's kind of very fine line between advertising and underwriting. Anyway, so that brings in money, and there's events and so forth. But it's really driven by a mission. It's a nonprofit. And the mission for Radio Milwaukee is to try to bring the community together. We're such a divided community by race, by income, by neighborhoods, by you name it. And the goal of the people that started this 15 years ago was to really try to expose people to other people in the community that they wouldn't normally get to meet, and using music as sort of the way in. So the music is the candy, and then we give you the medicine.
Yep.
We bring you in by playing music that hopefully you like, and then we introduce you through stories, through events about other people in the community to hopefully make you more aware of what's going on around you, make you more open-minded. So it's a mission that I felt really strong about, and that I really embraced. So that's really what it's about. And so I was there helping them at the beginning as a consultant, helping them elevate their digital presence through their website and social media. And we did that really well. The numbers went up really dramatically. We had a great team. I had a great team to work with. I was there on site for 3 days a week and really felt like a part of the staff. I was the grandfather. It's all the young people. I was the office dad, I guess. And I just loved the mission and the people. And then when I was offered the job as executive director, I thought that would be a good fit for me.
And then, Glenn, how long were you executive director for?
For 4 years.
For 4 years.
That was, when I was asked whether I wanted, I said, I can't really commit forever. They said, the recruiter said, 3 to 5 years. And I said, yeah, I could do that. So, then I got to the point where I was getting older and wanted to, not work every day, not work as hard. So, yeah.
Glenn, why did you go into 88.9? And the reason I'm asking is coming out of Full House and everything that you had just gone through just seems like, wow, what a great time to just take a breath.
Yeah.
And you did a little bit, but not really that long. And then you kind of got into it again. I mean, so what was, did you?
I like to work. I mean, I like working. I like feeling productive. I like feeling validated.
Totally get it.
I like feeling relevant, and Radio Milwaukee was so fun. I mean, it was such a great, again, like I went from journalism where, money was not, the main thing, to business where money was like almost everything.
Yep.
And then I went to a mission-driven organization where, money, we needed to bring the money in, but it wasn't really what it was about. It was about trying to do something for the community. And that was really, really important to me. And it was also, the vibe was young and fun, music, and it was all new music. It isn't like your oldie, like a lot of people just listen to their oldies, and that's fine. I'm not judging. I'm judging a little, but this was new music that you have to be open-minded to be able to want to hear something that you've never heard before.
Sure.
It's about discovery, and that sense of discovery, by definition, discovery is something that has never been discovered. You're discovering it, so it's new. And the idea of as I'm getting to my 60s, trying to stay fresh and keep discovering and keep growing. This provided that opportunity. Really, when you think about my career, I was always discovering new stuff and, being open to discovery, whether it was the digital space or whatever. I like that. I don't want to be stuck. I don't want to be just like someone who's doing the same thing over and over again. So that was an opportunity for me to continue to discover and stay fresh and learn and be new,
Going from Full House to 88.9 had to be a dramatic shift. And you talked a little bit about it where, money is kind of everything with an agency. Or if it's not everything, it's a huge driver. Yeah. Then you go to 88.9 and that's more mission driven. Glenn, what was the culture shock that you ran into when you got there? And then how did you readjust to it?
Yeah, it was really funny. I used to dream about keeping time. Like they didn't put their time in, how much time do they? And then I realized we don't keep time here. There was no time sheets, that was really, that woke me up, that how different it really was. It was wonderful. The culture was, it was interesting because, having managed a large staff, this was a staff of about 25, and you got to know everybody, and it was really more of a family, which I enjoyed when I was at Full House. And then when it got so big, it sort of lost that, So I really enjoyed the family atmosphere. I found it really refreshing, the culture, and the fact that people were there for the mission. They all could have made more money somewhere else. They were really talented people, but they were there because they enjoyed the environment. They enjoyed the culture. I thought it was a really good fit for me because we cared about what we did. We worked hard, but we also had a lot of fun. And I think it's different in a nonprofit because of that. The nonprofit culture, at least there, was really refreshing for me. It was, we had people that really, sometimes like in my business, we had like a mission statement, but I don't even know if anybody even knew what it was. It was like, and you have like the value statement because you're supposed to do that. And then someone puts it in a drawer and not to say all companies are like that, but in our case, I'm not sure we really talked about it very much. At Radio Milwaukee, it was something we talked about all the time, and if we got off mission, there were people that say, well, how does that relate to the mission? How is that going to help us do what we're supposed to be doing? And that was really cool. It was, they talk about the why, like, was it Simon or whatever? Yeah. Simon Sinek. And, it's like, I was really struggling for the why at Full House. We're saying, well, we're trying to help our clients grow their business. And that's a good thing because they're going to hire more people. and it's good for their economy, and it's good for people and so forth. So that's kind of how I came up with a mission or rationalized what we were trying to do. And that's true. It was, but what didn't feel quite as hard. It didn't touch the heart as much as what Radio Milwaukee did. I think it's a challenge sometimes in business to find, a mission that you can really, really, really believe is true, and that was not a case at Radio Milwaukee.
Glenn, let me last question about
I felt
89.
really lucky to have that, by the way. I felt really fortunate to feel that.
Well, this question kind of goes into that is special.
Mm-hmm.
So you come in and you kind of inherit this tight-knit band of brothers from the get-go. How did you ensure that it kept going? It's one thing to try to build it, but it's another thing to preserve it, right?
Yeah, it's actually really interesting because the cool thing was that I didn't have to build it. And I mentioned that it's like I walk into something that was in great shape, and I give my predecessor, Mary Louise Mussolini, a ton of credit for that, as well as the staff that she put together. I mean, it was so easy not to build from scratch or to be responsible for building it. And I just felt, I had been there for a year and a half as a consultant, so I had a good feel for the place. So I didn't come in cold, as the boss. And so I really felt like it was more just like sliding over, and I kind of knew what it was all about. I mean, mostly, until before. So I don't know. It wasn't hard. I think the other thing was that it just felt like sometimes things just feel like a good fit. It's a relationship.
Yeah.
It's like this works, and it just felt like a good fit. It was a good match for me, and the people, felt right.
Wow.
So.
How many times on this program has the word "find your why" come up? Wow. Yeah. I mean, and I know we're kind of winding down, but what a great way to kind of transition down in this conversation. But you clearly found your why, and I think about for someone like you, they were lucky to have you, because someone like you with all the experiences and business. I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but, hurdles you've been through. That's exactly what a lot of organizations are in need of. So you were able to find the balance of, I've got this great experience that I brought from a Full House, wherever, where the dollar sign was over your head. And you know what? There was value to 88.9 by you having that experience. And now you kind of added some heart to the marketing. And what a great way to kind of come full circle. So, yeah,
a lot of the same challenges. Thank you very much. It's just some of the same challenges existed, though. Radio is a very, very much a dynamic business right now. There are a lot of challenges, with podcasts like this. What competition for ears? Satellite radio, YouTube. People are listening to music. There's so much competition right now. The market is sliced so thin. So that was, there are a lot of challenges to that job as well. Again, in the changing market, that digital brings, how that challenges everything. But it was interesting, and I loved it. But it was time to step away.
Glenn Kleiman, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I love hearing your story. I'm so thankful for you just taking time out and sharing it with us and the listeners. You are an awesome dude, and I really appreciate your time. Glenn, you've got the last word. How do people connect with you? What do you want to plug? This time is yours, so have at it.
First, thanks for being interested. I mean, it's sort of for your life to be interesting to someone else is pretty wild. So thank you. No, I'm not plugging anything because I'm pretty much doing some side gigs that I'm full with. So I'm not looking, I guess I'm thinking like go Bucks, go Brewers are my last two words.
On that note.
Glenn, thank you so much.
Thank you, Glenn.
It's been wonderful. Awesome.
Thank you guys. I really appreciate it. Take care.
Cheers.